I'm going to guess what you already think happened to Toys R Us. Amazon, right? Maybe Walmart. Maybe kids glued to screens. Maybe just the slow death of them all. And you're not entirely wrong. Those things happened. But here's the part nobody told you. The three Wall Street firms that owned Toys R Us when it collapsed walked away with hundreds of millions of dollars in profit. 33,000 people lost their jobs overnight. $800 million in supplier bills went unpaid. And the people who built the trap made money while it collapsed. So the question was never what killed Toys R Us. The question is, who designed the kill? And why did nobody stop them? To understand how Toys R Us was destroyed, you first have to understand what it actually was. Charles Lazarus didn't set out to build a toy empire. In 1948, he opened a baby furniture store in Washington, D.C. Small, simple, nothing special. But parents kept asking him for toys, so he started selling them. And then he had an idea nobody had tried before. What if a toy store worked like a supermarket? Wide aisles, massive inventory, everything in one place. Self-service. No salesperson hovering over your shoulder telling you what your kid should want. In 1957, he renamed it Toys R Us, with a backward R, because kids write letters backward. Lazarus wanted you to feel that every time you saw the sign. By the 1990s, it worked. Not just worked, dominated. Toys R Us wasn't a store, it was a destination, a reward. The place your parents took you when you'd done something right. Those fluorescent lights, that carpet smell. Walls stacked floor to ceiling with things you desperately wanted. At its peak, the company controlled over 20% of all toy sales in America. 1 in 5 toys bought in this country, statistically, 1 came from here. For decades, it felt untouchable, which makes what happened next feel almost evil. By the early 2000s, the retail world was shifting fast. Walmart started undercutting on price, hard and deliberately. Target expanded its toy sections and made buying toys something you could fold into your regular grocery run. No special trip, no dedicated store. Just throw it in the cart. And Amazon was quietly rewiring what shopping meant entirely. Now, here's what every other video tells you, and then stops. They say Amazon killed Toys R Us. The internet won. Retail lost. Story over. But that's only half true, because Toys R Us wasn't the only toy retailer facing this pressure. Every retailer faced it. Most survived. Some thrived through it. Toys R Us was bleeding, but it was not dying. Toys R Us didn't run out of customers, it ran out of oxygen. Therefore, the board started looking for help. New owners, new capital, a rescue operation. They found 3 firms who were very interested. And that's where the real story starts. In 2005, 3 private equity firms made Toys R Us an offer. KKR Bain Capital, Vornado Realty Trust, $6.6 billion. They would take the company private. It sounded like a rescue. It was a trap. Here's how a leveraged buyout actually works. And pay close attention, because this is not complicated. It just sounds complicated. And that's exactly how they want it. KKR, Bain, and Vornado didn't pay $6.6 billion out of their own pockets. They borrowed most of it. And then, they placed that debt directly onto Toys R Us itself. Read that again. They bought the company with borrowed money and made the company responsible for paying it back. The business being rescued was handed the bill for its own rescue. Overnight, Toys R Us carried $5 billion in debt. Annual interest payments exceeded $400 million every single year. To put that in perspective, Toys R Us was spending more on interest payments alone than it would have cost to completely renovate every single store in America. Let that sink in. Not some stores, every store, every year, just in interest. Therefore, every business decision from that moment forward wasn't about growing the company, it was about surviving the debt. When Amazon started eating their online sales, Toys R Us needed a serious e-commerce platform. They couldn't fund it. When stores started feeling dated, carpets aging, lighting dimming, fixtures years behind Target's clean, modern interiors, they needed renovations. The capital wasn't there. Here's the strangest part. Toys R Us actually tried to solve the Amazon problem early. In 2000, they cut a deal, paying Amazon to exclusively sell their toys on the platform. It seemed smart. Then Amazon let other toy sellers in anyway. Toys R Us sued, won. But the years lost to that distraction, while Target and Walmart were building their own online infrastructure, were gone forever. They were fighting with both hands tied behind their back, one hand tied by debt, the other by time they'd already lost. They didn't buy Toys R Us to save it. They bought it to use it. Now, here's the part that should make your blood run cold. While those stores were aging, while that website was falling behind, while those staff levels were being cut to bare minimums, KKR, Bain Capital, and Vornado were still collecting fees. Management fees, transaction fees, advisory fees, paid every year, directly to the firms, without pause. Post-bankruptcy legal filings exposed the full picture. Millions extracted annually, while the company they owned was deteriorating in real time. Inside the stores, carpets faded, lights flickered, shelves stayed empty longer between restocks. Staff smiled through jobs that were slowly being hollowed out beneath them. But the fee payments never stopped. The stores were still generating revenue. The debt was extracting the life. Former executives later testified that the company had the operational strength to compete. The brand still worked. Customers still walked in. But the money kept flowing out to the firms who owned it. Not back into the stores, not into the people who worked there. Out. Every year, in fees. The people who owned Toys R Us were getting paid to watch it die. Customers felt it. Not all at once, not dramatically, but gradually. Walking into a Toys R Us started to feel different, a little less magical, a little more tired. The website was years behind Amazon. Staff had been cut to minimums. Inventory systems ran on outdated technology. Store reinvestment budgets were slashed repeatedly to service a debt that never got smaller. Therefore, customers started drifting to Amazon, to Target, to Walmart. Therefore, sales declined. Therefore, the debt became even harder to service. Therefore, the spiral tightened, slowly, then all at once. By 2017, the situation was critical. Toys R Us attempted to renegotiate its debt. But the moment that news hit the press, the whole structure collapsed faster than anyone expected. Suppliers panicked, started demanding cash up front before shipping any product. Bond prices collapsed to 18 cents on the dollar. The cost of debt insurance jumped 2,500% in weeks. 2,500%. The company that had once been synonymous with childhood was now a financial corpse. Still breathing, already gone. In September 2017, they filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. The announcement called it a restructuring, a chance to shed the debt and return leaner. It wasn't. In 2018, Toys R Us announced full liquidation. Close every store in the United States, all of them. 735 locations. 33,000 employees lost their jobs. Not with generous severance, not with real transition support. They showed up one day, and the next day, there was nothing left to show up to. Suppliers were owed $800 million in unpaid bills. $800 million. Small manufacturers, family businesses, companies that had built their entire operations around being a Toys R Us supplier. They got pennies on the dollar, if they got anything at all. And the children who measured good days by a trip to Toys R Us just watched the windows get papered over, the shelves go empty, Jeffrey disappear. That's the thing nobody tells you about a death spiral. Once it starts, it doesn't take years, it takes months. So, what happened to KKR, Bain Capital, and Vornado? Nothing. KKR had already recovered its initial investment through dividends and fees, years before the bankruptcy was even filed. Bain Capital extracted significant returns throughout the ownership period. And Vornado, a real estate firm, remember, had been quietly monetizing the underlying store leases the entire time. For Vornado, the stores were never really the point. The land beneath them was. 33,000 people lost their jobs. $800 million in supplier bills went unpaid. And the three firms that engineered the entire structure, loaded the debt, collected the fees, ran down the stores, and walked away when it collapsed, faced no criminal charges, no regulatory consequences, no serious public accountability. Because what they did was not illegal. I want you to sit with that. Not Amazon killed Toys R Us. Amazon was just the weather. It hit every retailer. Most of them survived. The real story is this. 3 firms bought an American institution with borrowed money, made that institution carry the debt, extracted profit as it deteriorated, walked away when it collapsed, and left 33,000 ordinary people with nothing. This was not mismanagement. This was not bad timing. This was not disruption. This was a business model. The company wasn't dying because kids stopped loving toys. It was dying because debt always came first. And Toys R Us was not the first company this happened to. It will not be the last. It was just the one that hurt the most because you grew up there. They didn't just kill a toy store. They killed the place where childhood used to live. And nobody went to jail.